Here we go. Rick Breeze weather. Hot air on Rick Breeze weather. Rick Breeze weather. Ladies and gentlemen,
Oh, no, that is
please
it.
welcome Rick Breeze. We're in the car. We're driving to 95 BFM to go talk to Rick Breeze, aka Richard Huntington, who is the technical wizard behind BFM's existence. He's literally built the station. He is also Rick Breeze weather. He's the weather person for the station, and we're going to go find out what makes Rick tick. It's really funny for me to be talking to you face to face in an interview context, because every morning at 7:35 a.m. we would talk about the weather, but we don't do it face to face that often. So this feels like a little treat for me.
It's great anonymity being behind the microphone as well. So
it is, yeah. So Rick, you have been at BFM now officially for 40 years, which is pretty incredible. This is the 40th year that you've been around the station.
About right.
What first brought you in through these doors?
Just walking past, I think, and looking into the technical room. It was a treasure hunt, I think, like a first year sort of orientation. Treasure hunt around the university, and somehow I ended up here. I think it was even the wrong place. I was searching for, maybe I was searching for a student magazine or something, but maybe Kraken. And I just looked in through the technical door, and there was all of this equipment and broadcast gear, and I've just had such a fascination since I was the youngest kid with radio, and had all sorts of cheap kind of recycled stuff at home that I'd made my own radio station out of and things, and suddenly there was this sort of more professional looking gear, but and so I just had to go in and introduce myself, and next thing I ended up fixing some gear, and after I fixed some gear I suddenly got offered a part-time job, so that's kind of how it started here.
What were you studying? Were you at the University of Auckland at the time?
I came to university to study engineering, but never finished anything here at uni.
That's sometimes the BFM way. You get in here and then you go to the school of BFM instead.
Yep.
So was it in this building at the time, the station?
It was. All jammed into a little corner over behind you there.
So where we are now is quite the floor. It's quite the floor span in here, but it was just one small room at the time. Is that right?
It was a couple of rooms. So, and I have to try and remember, but there was a corridor that ran the length of this floor. Right in the corner, which is part of our production studio now, was the little hotbox studio. And it was a genuine hotbox. It had a couple of extractor fans that somebody had hacked into the ceiling.
Nice.
A whole wall of records across the back, which was a fantastic look. And in summer it was probably 35, 40 degrees in there sometimes. So lots of shirtless DJs and
smoking inside at that time.
I
don't remember it.
That was always a technical no-no, but probably.
Yes. And so when you started hanging out at BFM, what was the scene, the vibe at the time? What year was this?
84. It was AM.
Yeah.
So it was still, can't even remember the frequency now. Strangely enough.
There's a Chills poster on the wall.
1404.
Yes.
So with the transmitter down in the Shore Road playing field swamp almost. But it was small, and it was just totally foreign to me in terms of the people and kind of hang out, something I'd never come across before, but just fascinating, intense, artistic people. And quite a few involved in the university as well. Like one of the people at the station worked in the architecture school and looked after the anechoic chamber. So we go over and hang out there, which was amazing. And yes, people would get stoned up here, and not me. I never. Strangely enough,
never inhaled.
Lie back in the. I'm sure second hand, lie back in the anechoic chamber. But all sorts of strange connections, and obviously all the musical connections.
What was the kind of scene? Who were some of the bands that were coming through at that stage?
Yeah, terrible memory for bands. I certainly remember quite a few really wild punk gigs in the very first couple of years I was here in the uni cafe over there. Pretty crazy ones. But here at BFM, a lot came through in the 80s. Certainly remember things like Headless Chickens was a big one fairly early on, and
Yeah.
Mark Turney was working here, so we did a lot of engineering. The studio in 1985, when the station went FM,
Yeah.
there was a total upgrade of equipment, so everything was replaced pretty much, and it was a brand new recording studio
Oh, wow.
with a brand new Tascam 8-track, and so it was really opened up to bands and to come in and record, and lots of recording was done here. So hard to remember who, but many people came through here and recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we going now?
We're going to the roof.
I've never been.
Can't believe you've never been on the roof, Annabelle.
Make sure that's not locked.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun. That's not
I
locked.
do remember scaling down the side of the building once and getting in through the window.
Sorry,
tell
you're going
anybody
to have to
about
say
that.
that one again. Did you get that? Okay, good. So what are we doing up here, Rick? What happens on the roof?
Well, not very much, fortunately.
Bit of smoking weed sometimes.
It is the place that all of our little radio links and things work from.
Which was the radio?
Pretty much everything that's here really is radio related. Stuff inside here for our air conditioning, all of these antennas and bits and pieces. Yeah. Also the roof where there was AM broadcast for a short length of time, and pirate radio broadcast as well from here.
Cool.
Where they, the stories of them being holed up in the tunnel down below the building, but cables coming up to the antennas up here. And
Is it true that they used to hide the transmitter in a fridge at one point to get away from the postal service when they weren't paying fees?
I wouldn't be surprised, but there's definitely the story of them locking themselves in the tunnel down underneath the service tunnel.
Was that BFM or was that pirate?
That was pirate.
pirate,
yeah,
yeah.
pirate, but probably connected in some way at that time.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're all pirates at the end of the day.
Certainly found some of the old gear in the old locker from back then, various FM transmitters and things, which certainly wouldn't have been legal ones.
No. Fantastic.
Best thing that ever happened, moving BFM transmitter onto the Sky Tower. I hope that we can keep transmitting from there for a while more.
When did we move on to the Sky Tower?
It's around the mid-90s.
Yeah.
But we were one of the first stations on there. Us and My FM were the first two.
And were you responsible for getting us a good spot?
Yeah, well, I guess so, yeah.
What's
Yep.
it like up the top of the Sky Tower?
It's very full there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stations packed into there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
awesome. What was your very first interest in radio? Do you remember what first set it off for you, Rick?
I don't, well, probably just playing with radios, like fixing up stuff. So, yeah, I just ended up with these old valve radios and things, and people that realised I was interested in
Yeah.
electronics and give me old stuff, and so I just ended up with a room full of them, and I'd sort of fix them up. And
Yeah.
so there was that, and listening to the music and all the local stuff and things was just so exciting all the time, and I always imagined myself being there making it as well. So there was that side of it, and then also having a shortwave radio, starting off with my parents' little transistor radio they kept by the bed that
Cool.
I'd go in and Saturday mornings and tune through the shortwave bands and see what other countries and things we could pick up. So it just kind of
that's
that
cool.
whole the whole expansiveness of it and connectedness of it.
Yeah.
And then that it just became more of an interest in the equipment, and then I managed to get in to actually have a look at the local radio station in Napier 2ZC. Ran into the school fair. There was one of the DJs playing records down there for the kids, and he was
Cool.
the host of the kids show, and went and talked to him because I was just really interested in the stereo system they had set up, and got an invite up to sit in on the kids show. And
How old would you have been?
I think I was about 6 or 7 then.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an early internship.
Yeah. And I quickly learned the secret doorbell code for their studio door.
When did you start building radios, and when did you start building a station at
I
home?
was kind of
Yeah.
doing that at the time, but it was pretty soon after that.
Right.
I started putting things together.
And so
Found
what?
some old record players and
What was your
Real
setup
to
like?
real
What did
tape.
it look like at home?
I've got a photo of it somewhere, but it was an old. I don't know, it was just made out of old stuff that had mostly probably come from the rubbish dump. But I remember getting a board and putting lots of controls in it for the mixers and switches and things, and fitting it in the case of an old record player, I think, and found a gooseneck microphone stand from somewhere, and it had a little cassette recorder microphone, and managed to get enough amplification out of some bits of old radios to mix in with the turntables. And then I
That's
started
so
playing
cool.
with tape machines, and the main thing that was just a total obsession was instant start, push a button and have something play.
Yeah.
Because that was a really unusual thing to have happen back then. I mean, we're kind of talking the 70s, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, we're in the lounge. This is obviously a lounge, but this is a space that we quite often have bands come and play up in. When you're building a setup for bands in here, Rick, what are you usually bringing in and like putting in this space?
Pretty much everything, really. We're really lucky that Rowan lent us some of his speakers, so that
Callback.
that helped us quite a bit. But yeah, no, we'll just bring in a bit of gear, bit of mine, bit of the stations, bit of backline, whoever's leaving their band's backline in production at the time, and
that's the tax you pay is where we'll use it.
We're lucky that we've got such a big room.
Yeah.
And bands seem to really enjoy it in here. I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds okay.
Hey.
Now I can show you something here too.
Yes. Let's have a look. We're standing in front of what kind of looks like 2 panels from something you'd see inside the TARDIS, or maybe like a fridge in a 1960s futuristic kind of world. Like maybe I'll push a button and it'll like invent a hamburger or something for me.
This is a real time capsule. All of these racks, they run right from the early 80s through to almost today. This was the very first thing that I actually made. This went in for 1985, the first year of FM, and it was a little switcher that we just put any of the studios on here and mix them together. So there you go.
Oh wow!
Plus seeing something different to the quad and other speakers and things.
So
but it's still here and it's still working.
That's
still
amazing.
In place. Yeah.
So this is the transmitter. Is that right?
Well, it's our studio processing gear and a few servers and things as well now, but the things associated with the transmission of what we got in the early 90s, which is these pieces of gear with the lights on them there, which is still basically defining the BFM sound.
When you say that, is that to do with the way they're compressed, or is that?
This is all the compression and everything for on air.
So this and this, that's the BFM sound.
That pretty much is.
That's awesome. Yep. To the production studio. Should we go in there?
Yeah, why not? This is actually the corner where the on-air studio used to be, so it was probably about this size.
Oh, really?
Jammed into this corner. Next door to it was the original production studio. Outside was a reception desk, and then there was a tiny closet down the side where the toilet is now, which had the little equipment rack. And
so this was it? This was what we would think of as Studio A now? That's amazing.
So this was the on-air studio.
Fantastic. So now bands come in here and there's a bit of band practice that happens in here sometimes. What are all of these tapes? I've literally never known what they do.
They're pretty much all of the advertisements that were made from, I don't know, when, 93, 92, till 95, 96, 98, 02. And I think down there a whole lot of the old 8-tracks, which are mostly advertisements, but around the place every now and then you'll find an interesting band 8-track. They were quite often shared because it cost a fair bit for the reel, so the band would just, have a little bit and then another one would come along and record on another part of it.
That's so cool. You've had a lot of different roles here across that time as well. You had a radio show was it in the 80s as well? In the Pink? Is that right?
In the 90s.
In the 90s, In the Pink. Can you tell us a wee bit about In the Pink? Because I love it as a concept, but it was also a wee bit historic as well, as like a first of its kind maybe.
It maybe was. Well, at the time, I'd only maybe for a year or something been out as gay and had met up with Charles Bracewell, who was the co-host of that show. And I ended up flatting with him. And I'm not sure where. I think he'd become vaguely involved with the station and just came up with this idea of doing a radio show. A queer radio show.
You had some radio plays and things in there, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Charles was the most creative person, and performed quite a lot and wrote, did a lot of writing, and was really, really keen to produce that sort of material. So.
And what kind of music were you playing? What was the stuff that you were enjoying at the time?
On that show, it was definitely Huskadoo and Bob Mould and Kirsty McCall and also, it's hard to remember. I just remember those because we played them just about every week. Yeah. But yeah.
We were looking through some old books of Biffum the other day and found one of the drawn adverts for In the Pink, and it was next to like the Women's Hour show and other things like this. It feels like it was a really maybe socially politically interesting time to be making radio like that.
Oh, it was.
Even in the
yeah,
context
yeah.
of BFM, which
It
we
was-
know
it
is a
was
very...
really controversial in a way as well. And we were in just before Talkback, so I think we were before Talkback, but in any case we managed to catch a bit of the audience for that show, and that led to a lot of interaction to start with. Certainly got a lot of really interesting phone calls. The very first show, I think we had lots of calls, and made the decision to record them all and then play the most interesting ones afterwards. And that was probably a bit naughty, but it certainly diffused things a little bit.
Yeah.
We had a few abusive ones there actually too, strangely enough. But,
I mean, I'm not shocked to hear that, but what was the rest of the station like at the time? People pretty supportive of it?
Extremely,
awesome.
extremely, yeah.
Okay, what studio are we in here, Rick?
Studio 3.
Studio
which quite
3.
often confuses people because it's really the second on-air studio and backup studio, but given that we started with 2 and this was the
third that got made?
the addition,
And what happens in this studio usually?
Mostly newsreading now and interviews, and pre-records and things, a little bit of podcasting and bits and pieces really.
There's good gear, there's lots of good weird bits around here. Not all of it works, but when it does, it's very exciting.
But some old stuff here, like those turntables from the start of FM.
Wow.
In 85, and they were a fantastic choice. I mean, that was probably the best thing, is that it was, good gear that we got. It mightn't have been the flashiest or the biggest, but compared to some of the $1 million budget FM stations that were just starting up in Auckland then. But
I always think about the mics as well being quite like iconically BFM too. Where did these sort of appear from?
Well, again, the same thing really. It was just that what was available around that time and quite common to use, so we went with that. I'm not sure about the choice of 421s. That probably would have been David Reed, the technical director, when we did the FM build, who picked those, but they're fantastic mics. And again, they were a fairly common thing sort of in 70s into the 80s radio a lot, especially overseas.
There's a lot I want to ask you about these different hats or like technical things that you've done. One of which I do know you had a lot of involvement with Allan Jansen and the recording that he was doing, and there's some pretty cool credits where you're an engineer or have had some, involvement in some recordings on songs like, How Bizarre, a legendary track. How did that kind of connection with Allan come about?
It was actually through Mark Tierney here, and he was probably my biggest introduction into music production and recording. He was fantastic, and we were doing a lot in the production studio here, so I got involved I always thought of myself as the technician that would make everything work properly and sound really, really good.
Yeah.
And I'd be the one tweaking the noise gates through a live mix down of of a Headless Chickens track or something. But he'd somehow become involved with Allan down at his old Modulate studios, down by where Real Groovy used to be. And he was having some issues with one of the machines down there, maybe one of the Fairlights, and I came along and got involved there, and then somehow just ended up doing more and more. And that.
Do you remember much about the OMC sessions? Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, that was probably the first time that I got really seriously involved in engineering, and a lot of it was troubleshooting. Yeah. So they'd recorded a lot of vocals already, but were having a real hard time making them sound right. It was just one of those, you've caught the moment and the energy, and everything is right artistically, but technically it sounds
a bit off.
Not so good. So I spent a bit of time with we hired a few flash EQs and things and played around and managed to get what ended up being that vocal sound pretty much in a very strange way. And so then that track obviously became pretty successful, and we were rapidly on to doing a whole album, and I was just in there pretty much working on everything. Not so much the recording, but just all of the mixing, and we ended up mastering that as well.
Oh, cool. Now we're in Studio 8. This is
your home.
My home for 5 years. This is the main on-air studio. This is the desk setup that all the DJs use, which you've built basically. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a wee bit about what are we working with here, Rick? What are we looking
We've
at?
had a few generations. This one's been around a little while, but we pretty much went with... Originally, the first FM radio desk was by Paul Kirk Electronics in Australia, so fairly sort of low volume production, but used in a lot of stations there. That was the old rotary dial desk that we had.
Yeah.
Ended up moving into Studio 3. We replaced it with another desk, which didn't last as well for a while, and then we went back to Paul Kirk for the last update. And this is getting pretty old now, but I love it. And yet another one of those things from my childhood, I just had an absolute fascination with illuminated buttons. That was another thing from the radio station. It's like, wow, a light up button that I can press and have something happen. It's so good. So
big
the more
red
the
do
better
not
for
push,
me.
you know,
So
yeah.
for quite a while, it was just like as many illuminated buttons as I could possibly get into a studio.
The sort of magic of this desk and how we usually talk on the radio is that one of these buttons we refer to as the Rick button, which it's got other purposes too. Like when we have an off-site broadcast or something, that's the button we're connecting this desk to our off-site gear with. But I think of it as the Rick button because in the morning we play the Rick Breeze Weather Sing, and you know, when we've got other guests and stuff, you have to either call them or connect via Zoom or Skype or something. But with Rick, we just press one button, the Rick Breeze button, and pull the fader up, and then we are connected to your house, which is where we're going to go next. We're here at Rick's house. We've come in the back way so that we can see where the weather happens. So when I'd be in the studio and everyone's listening at home to Rick Breeze Weather, what we get is Rick here in his house. What usually happens, Rick? You come...
Well, it's a bit of a sprint down the hallway, usually because I'm running late.
When you hear the...
kind of, this is where I keep all the radio hidden away. And turn a few things on, grab my radio mic, and it's ready to go.
And then where do you do it from usually?
Just outside here.
Let's go.
I did used to go up on the roof. I ended up sort of wearing away the roof.
Oh my God.
A good bit of metal fatigue, so I thought it probably
there?
wasn't the best idea. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Quite a good view from up there. I can see all of the North Shore. So, but
Really?
usually I'm just at the table here with some worn footprints in the ground where I stand
This
every
is the
morning.
spot. This is literally the weather spot right here.
I was wondering what was doing that, and then I realised it was me every morning. Right here.
When did
Easy
you
to keep up with it?
become Rick Breeze at BFM? When did that actually start?
That is a
'Cause you
really
were
good question.
you were Ricky Huntington, you know, technical Rick, and you were doing In the Pink way before that kind of kicked in. So when did Rick Breeze become a thing?
Yeah, I can't remember, to be fair. It was quite a long time ago. It was either a Wallace Chapman, possibly a Hugh Sunday breakfast as well. I do remember talking to him.
So that would have been the late 90s or the early
Probably.
2000s?
Yeah, it would have been late 90s,
Yeah.
I reckon.
Yeah. The sting is iconic. We were all singing it in the car. Rick Breeze weather, ladies and gentlemen. So we've walked into Rick's basement and it is like absolutely packed to the rafters with old bits of radio gear, cables, there's all sorts of records in the corner, and what I see is at least 2 tinkering stations, so I think maybe we should go have a look at those spots. What are we working with over here, Rick?
I'm kind of getting back to doing a bit more here. I know I had another place I worked in that was a lot tidier than this, but it's kind of nice to have something really close by here to work on things. Some of my test gear is so old that now it needs to be repaired, so that's kind of what's going on at the moment here. Bit of work keeping BFM stuff going, bit of new development stuff for other people. But
I like the understatement of just a little bit of work, keeping these things going. Just a little bit of coming in at 4 a.m. when the alarm goes off and being at the station at
it's usually when I have to use
Sunday.
this, it's a real panicked rush to get something going. So that's my excuse for it being such a mess.
Nice. I mean, it looks fantastic. I know that you found a box of your In the Pink tapes.
Yes.
Whereabouts are they?
Yes, they're through in the back room. From the depths in a very decaying, falling apart bag, but
Amazing.
every show we recorded.
Whoa, all of them, and now they've got these beautiful handwritten labels on them. Where did they come from?
That was Charles's wonderful mother.
Oh my gosh.
Who lived in Granity on the west coast of the South Island, and took all of these and went through, listened to everyone and made notes of what was on
So
them.
you would send her the tapes of your show?
Yeah.
Where we've got Night After Passions, Gay Disco Music, Sean Agony Aunt Lawson from Amsterdam.
Wow.
Does that ring any bells?
I know exactly what that is.
So have you had these digitised ever?
No. There's some people that are interested, but there's quite a lot.
I mean, I'm interested. I want to hear more about these as well. If we are correct, it might have been the first kind of at the same time that Wellington Access Radio had one.
Definitely, that was one of the first things I ever listened to. Before I came out, went and parked my car, found a place in Auckland where I could listen to Access Radio on I think it was a Sunday morning when they had the show.
So it was
right beside the rugby fields on Shore
Amazing.
Road.
There's poetry in that as a placement as well.
Tuned into the staticky, distant show to try and hear what was going on.
So that was like the first dedicated gay radio show.
Yeah,
in New Zealand.
Yep.
Yeah, and then this was not super long afterwards, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Was it quite a important experience maybe having that radio show?
Oh yeah, it was tremendously.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I mean, there was not a lot of material that you could access very easily.
Yeah.
And hear real people talking, and I guess that helped me a lot in actually starting our radio show too. And I'm sure we get so many people would write and call in saying that how much they loved the show when they were a teenager, and they'd go to bed, sneak a radio in under their pillow to listen to our show at 9 o'clock at night.
What kind of stuff were you guys talking about? Were you just talking about your lives, or were you getting people in for interviews?
Mostly community, yeah, lots of interviews, community events, talking a bit about music, but more what was going on in the community.
There's going to be a lot of change for radio. There already is a lot of change for radio happening, and probably the next 5-10 years are going to see really radical shifts for stations like BFM. What do you predict or see as being like the future of these spaces, or these kind of technical moves that we might see happening?
Well, I mean, I still like to think that there's some real strong focuses of community like BFM, so I'd like to keep that going. Without, obviously there's a change in technology and the way that people access that, and I'm so loving always live, direct happening. It's happening right now.
Totally.
But a lot of fragmentation, and it really feels like there's a big risk of losing so much of that culture and that collective being that's existed for a long time.
Yeah. Should we pop upstairs again?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it. We have come from BFM into your house, and we're going to circle back to BFM briefly, because 40 years is a pretty amazing time to be around anywhere, let
Not
alone
sure where it all went, but
let alone a station like BFM, which has seen a lot of changes and weathered some pretty wild storms, and is always weathering storms. When you are something small and independent and really love runs it, not money so much, you're always fighting a bit of an uphill battle. But do you have any reflections on what it's meant for you in that 40 years as a space that you've stuck around? There must be something that's kept you there, or something.
It's always felt like my family and just a place to be centred. And I heard somebody really nicely say it's a place for all the waifs and strays of the art world, potentially, or anywhere. But and it is kind of like that, and it's just so good seeing everything that happens every day. Yeah,
gets under your skin.
Yeah, it really does.
What do you hope for BFM's future and for that space as a place that you've poured a lot of love and time and energy into?
I'd like to hope that we can keep running as a radio station, as a broadcaster, along with all of the new stuff that's going on. It's a format that we'll see less and less, I imagine. But it's a really valuable one, I think. So it would be good for that to keep going. And as long as it keeps on attracting new people and is a place for those waifs and strays who have yet to find their niche in the world, maybe, then that's all good with me.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having us in your house and showing us around your other house, BFM. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.